Hey guys, what is up? Unrested here, and I have been busy. As you probably noticed, my schedule has slowed down quite a bit for uploading, and that is because Japan is no longer on lockdown for coronavirus. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm really not sure. I kind of felt like stuff is still being carried around too much as far as the virus is concerned, so I'm kind of surprised everything's open again, but kids are back to school. My school's open full time again, and businesses in Japan seem to be open full time again. It's a little scary. I hope all of you are staying healthy and safe. As for the video today, I want to jump right into our topic. Last week, I believe I covered what jail time was like, how you can get convicted and stuff in Japan. And this Osoroshi Saturday that I did on the weekend, I covered a lot of true crime stories. So a lot of people were asking me, what are some of the most famous crimes within Japan? There's actually, throughout time, there's quite a few, but I'm going to go into, I guess, what have been the last few famous crimes within the last decade or so, just to kind of keep it up to date so that I know for sure you can find a newspaper source and check into what I'm talking about. So there is three main ones I'm going to go into, and then I'm going to kind of end with what is the craziest true crime story I've ever heard in Japan. And it's a little bit different from some of the ones that Japanese people might recognize. Actually, I don't think there's many Japanese people who know about this crime, and that's because most of the information on it was in English newspapers back in America, because it involved an American Navy personnel who did some crazy stuff. But let's jump into it with our first one, the Sasebo stabbing. Now, this one is a little bit confusing because there's actually been two murders in Sasebo. There was the Sasebo stabbing with Nevada-chan, in which you can probably look up Nevada-chan online. The reason this girl is called Nevada-chan is because she was a, I believe, 7th grade junior high school student, and she asked one of her friends to go to the bathroom with her during school time, stabbed her to death, then went and got a teacher and said, "You've got to come to the bathroom and look at what's happened." The teacher comes, they find her classmate stabbed to death. They ask her why she did it, and at first she tries to deny everything. They take her to the police office. She's distraught, she's like crying, won't eat anything, won't drink anything. The police are actually being pretty nice with her about all this and just saying, tell us what happened. Did you get in a fight? Like, was there's some sort of attack, bullying going on? And apparently all it turned out was it was just like a really minor thing the other girl had said online about her fashion sense, and she stabbed her to death over that. So she actually did it though when she was still young enough to be tried as a child, and most times in Japan, if you are not tried as an adult, yes, you will be released. I believe she was released in less than 7 years and let back out into the world, and she's changed her name and apparently is living a very normal life now, which I guess is okay for her, but I don't know how okay that is for the victim's parents. The other one, Sasebo stabbing, is a really wild story that gets way crazier than Nevada-chan. Oh, and by the way, with Nevada-chan, the reason she's called Nevada-chan is she was wearing a Nevada sweatshirt that was from, if I believe correctly, American Eagle, who then made the same print again and actually got in trouble for printing this same style Nevada shirt because it was famous for being covered in blood when the girl was found after having stabbed her friend. So if you want to look up any information on her, just look up Nevada-chan, and she's a big Nichan meme. Anyway, the next big one is the Sasebo stabbing that people know of most recently, in which a girl who had somewhat become a hikikomori at school and kind of nestled herself away in a non-communication situation where she was always at home and not talking to any of her friends at school. She had left because they had called her crazy and stuff, and apparently, I know as sad as this is, she apparently really did have some serious mental problems going on. I believe she had schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and although she should have gotten help for this, the school should have realized this and probably sought out some sort of medical attention for her in a psychiatric sense. She instead dropped out of school, stayed at home, and her friends at school, they actually did worry about her apparently. Like, they actually would ask about her, even to the point that one girl who really cared about her, who had been her best friend in the past, tried to call her up and see if she was okay. And when she reached out, that girl said, "Hey, you should come over and we should hang out again." And she thought, this is my chance to help her get out of her, recluse, shut-in situation. Sadly, when this girl, who was a friend of hers at the school, went over there, she was not only stabbed to death, she was then had her hand chopped off post-mortem, and the girl who did this then started to post it on Nichan and I believe Twitter too, and that's how the police found out. Later, the reason they found out she was able to get away with this, because they wondered, they said, didn't she live with her parents, and like, wouldn't the parents have heard screaming and stuff? Well, apparently she lived in her own apartment even at 16 years old, because she had been so violent with her parents in the past that she had actually attacked her dad with a baseball bat. And instead of trying to actually get her some sort of psychiatric help, he bought her her own apartment, in which she was able to, I guess, premeditate a murder that she wanted to commit on one of her friends at school. It's a really sad case, and it's also known as a Sasebo stabbing. So sometimes these two stories get switched up because they were both from Sasebo. Is Sasebo a dangerous area? No, it's not. I don't know why both of those are happening in Sasebo. I don't know what the situation is there, that psychiatric care isn't in more of an effect after these two very violent attacks. Our next one you probably have heard about before, and this is the Akihabara stabbing, or the Akiba stabbing. It is when another hikikomori, sadly I feel like all these today are going to be about hikikomori, and I'm not trying to target hikikomori, but apparently being a shut-in and being a recluse tends to also follow a lot of the cases that are covered most prominently within Japan. And I don't know if that's a media thing, or if that's like a pick on the hikikomori sort of thing, or what, but these are the ones I have the most information on, hence they have become the most famous in Japan. And the Akihabara stabbings, a man who had been a shut-in for a while had been posting on his online blog online blog, not vlog, for quite a while about how he wanted to kill people. People read these posts, and I believe people even alerted the police and let them know that something was going down. The police did nothing, which often is the case when these things happen. Of course, now in Japan, if you post anything like that, if you post that you're going to attack or stab or hit people with a car, you actually will be arrested right away for threats. But during this time, something like this had never happened before. This guy was posting constantly on, once again, Nii-chan, whatever Japan's version of LiveJournal is. I believe they were using Mixi or something like that, that he was going to kill a bunch of people. And he actually even did like a countdown on the day that he was going to do it. He updated via his phone constantly throughout the day, saying, I'm almost there. I'm about to come to Akihabara and kill a bunch of people. I'm going to try and kill as many as I can and then commit suicide by cop. He rented a truck that day and drove it into Akihabara. He began to hit people with the truck until finally it stalled out and could no longer move. I believe he hit about 7 people before he finally jumped out and then started to stab people. In total, I believe 15 people were injured, 2 people died, and he was finally stopped by bystanders who were able to hold him down until the police came. He was then arrested, and he is currently in jail awaiting a death sentence. So another really sad situation that now has made Japan be very strict about any kind of online threats, and they do take those very serious now. And people have been arrested recently for making threats that they will come to an area and kill somebody. The most recent one that is, I don't know if I would call this the most, one of the most famous, but this is a really kind of wild one that happened only last year. And this is a Tokyo girls school stabbing, sorry. This was a private girls' school for elementary school children. And apparently, this story is so messed up to me because it makes me angry. I just think about if my own kids were in this situation, I get furious. Their elementary school was close to the apartment of a guy who was a hikikomori, again, a hikikomori. And the loud noises from this elementary school annoyed him so much because he was home all day. So I guess, I know if you are close to a school here, it can be very loud, but the loud parts of the day are usually when people are at work, so no one really complains. School doesn't start till about 8:45 or 9 o'clock, and then usually finishes up by 2:30. Sometimes you might have some late club activities that go till 4:30, but I mean, if you're upset with like kids singing and doing band practice, I mean, maybe you got more problems than just the elementary school. It's very innocent sounds coming from there. And I'm guessing what this guy was trying to like sleep through the day and then like be up all night, which is something that's very common with hikikomori, so that they can have less contact with people, because if they want to go to the convenience stuff, if they go at nighttime, then there's less of a chance for them to meet anybody. Anyway, this guy got so angry about this that he decided to walk out to the bus stop next to the girls' school, and he began to stab multiple girls and attack multiple parents who were waiting with their kids, until the police finally showed up, and then he stabbed himself in the throat, killing himself, which is, I mean, obviously, like I said, this guy had a lot more problems going on than just how loud an elementary school is. This one makes me so angry because it's like he was upset that people were enjoying the part of his life he gave up. He dropped out of elementary school because he couldn't handle the bullying, which, yeah, I'm against bullying, but if other people are there and can handle whatever the situation is, that doesn't give you a right to take out your anger on them, especially when they have nothing to do with your life. One of the craziest things about this story was recently after that happened, this was like this has only been about 6 months ago this happened, a prominent congressman who had retired from being a politician had a son who was a hikikomori, and he began to complain to his father about the noise of a local elementary school. And in the past, he had been very violent. He had attacked his father and his mother with a knife in the past. And when he began to complain about the elementary school being too loud and that he'd wish all the students there would die, his father actually rose up and killed his son, saying he did not want to make his family produce another killer like this other guy who had just murdered these poor innocent girls at the elementary school. And I believe he actually got a lighter sentence because of that. The judge actually took some pity on him. At the same time, you kind of wonder, like, couldn't you have just forced him into some sort of psychiatric help, had somebody take him to a hospital, rather than murder him? He had attacked his parents in the past, so they were kind of afraid of him, so I understand it to that aspect, but I don't know. It's a really complicated situation. I don't pretend to have the answers. I mean, that is an incredibly complex, multi-layered psychological problem that I shouldn't even be speaking on, because I wouldn't know how to handle it either. Okay, so let's finish up. This is like the craziest case that I ever heard in Japan, that even for me, I was like, whoa, that's pretty wild. So this deals with a Navy sailor who was at the base in Yokohama, and he was cheating on his wife with a lover in the Philippines. And even though his base was in Yokohama, whatever his job entailed with the Navy, he constantly had to make trips out to the Philippines to do his job. I don't know if it was like maintenance on ships out there or what was going on, but he somehow formed a relationship with a Filipino woman out there who had 8 kids. And she knew that he was married, but he told her that he wanted to divorce his wife and that he was working on it. And as you probably already know, in the Navy, if you commit adultery, you actually can get court-martialed for that. So instead of getting a divorce and admitting to the fact that he had been seeing another woman, he decided to plan the murder of his own Japanese wife here in Japan. Now, the way he went about this was very complicated. First off, he encouraged his lover in the Philippines to help him murder his wife via a holdup. And he wanted to have this happen because he knew his mistress, or whatever you want to call the cheating woman, the woman helping him cheat, he knew his mistress had a brother who was a taxi driver in the Philippines, and apparently it's very common for taxi drivers to get held up and mugged in the Philippines, with a gun. And so he said what he would like to set up with her is that him and his wife are in a taxi that gets holed up. They then have to shoot my wife and the taxi driver, and I'll inherit a bunch of money from the Navy because our insurance is really good. And then I will bring you and your 8 kids to Japan, which life is a lot better in Japan than in the Philippines, especially if you're a single mother of 8 kids trying to survive in the Philippines with, I think she had like almost no income at all. So at first she was kind of hesitant, but she was in such a desperate situation because she was trying to, feed 8 mouths, that she went along with the plan. And when he went back to Japan, he planned the trip to the Philippines and said, next time I have to go over there for work, you should come with me. And his wife came with him next time, and apparently when this all went down, they hired some friends to hold up the taxi and shoot. And whoever the friends were that the woman had hired kind of chickened out. They shot the taxi driver. He died, sadly. But apparently this Japanese woman that he was married to was such a tiger mom that she started to fight back and actually grabbed the gun and threw it into the bushes to protect her own kids who were with them at the time, because they were supposed to be shot too. Which, good on this mom for doing that, for coming to the front and taking control of the situation. I don't know if I would have the guts that mom had, but apparently she fought back so hard that the guy who had set this up with his mistress was just kind of shocked, like, oh no, what do I do now? So then he went back to Japan, and at first the Philippines weren't doing much about it, but the wife of the guy who was the taxi driver who got shot was very upset. So she had the Filipino police investigate it, who then connected with the Japanese police, who did an even more bang up job, and they pretty much connected all the different ties that led back to this guy. And this is where it really gets crazy to me, like the craziest part of how it ended. When they found out that this guy did it, when the Japanese police found out from the Filipino police that this guy did it, they contacted the military police, who were then headed to that guy's house to arrest him and have him court-martialed for attempted murder and murder of the taxi driver. He freaked out. He had a motorcycle that he had kept on base. He jumped on it, tried to escape the base as the military police were chasing him. He sped out into the road, and he just blew through every stoplight on the road to try and escape the situation. And during the time that he did that, a semi-truck was just going through a green light like it's supposed to, and slammed into him and killed him instantly by knocking him off his bike and, sending his body into oblivion. Which, it's kind of like that. I don't know who was driving that truck, but it must have been Karma himself, because that guy ended up dying because of that. And he was trying to get out of the whole situation. Now, I know it might suck that I've chosen the military. I've got nothing against the military. Friends with a lot of military people out here. Nothing against, obviously, Americans, as I myself am American. I don't want to say that the most interesting case I ever heard deals with a gaijin, but sorry, it is. It's, for me personally, it's just my own opinion of what I thought was the most wild, crazy case I had ever heard. What other cases have you guys heard about from Japan with murder? If you're interested in some of the murder cases that I had today that I talked about, you might want to check out my Osoroshi Saturday from last weekend, the 2-hour episode. The first 3 stories I do there are about some of the most famous murders from the past, and this is 1970s, 1960s in Japan, some of the most gruesome murders that happened. In the future, what other type of true crime stuff would you like to hear about from Japan? I've come to realize that those are 2 kind of interests of mine I've never tied together. I am a huge true crime fan, and obviously I'm a fan of Japan. I've lived here 13 years. And I've never really tied those 2 things together. I've realized that just recently when someone asked me, can you tell me more about the Japanese prison system and stuff like that, I thought, well, you know what? I've never really explored deep into the famous murders out here. So If you yourself want to learn a little bit more, let me know what cases you'd like to learn about. I was also thinking for a future video of covering movie stars who've been busted for drugs out here. I felt like that would be kind of interesting because it's always kind of really, it's a very weird sort of different situation. They're always busted for such a small amount, and it's so rare that movie stars would do that, because when a movie star in Japan gets busted for drugs, they lose everything. They lose everything. And I mean, it's, their life is over. It's crazy. So I would like to cover that for the future, just to let you know kind of the process of what happens to a person busted in the movie business. Let me know what you think about that idea. Until next time, I am Unrested, and I will talk to you again real soon.